but especially coming from a guy who's the former director of the FBI, a guy who spent most of his career prosecuting mobsters and gangsters, people who know and execute other humans and use this exact lingo of 86. Comey himself admitted in his follow-on message that he knew that this was a political statement. Well, the only reason he knew that, Jesse, was because a little over a month ago, a bunch of anti-Trump, anti-Elon Musk protesters were proliferating the use of this 8647 slogan.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, Salem News Channel. That was, of course, the D&I head, Tulsi Gabbard. He is the host of the Kyle Seraphin Show, available on Rumble, Apple, Spotify, a former FBI agent. Please welcome back to the program, Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thank you for taking the time. Kyle, when you found out what Comey posted on IG, what was your reaction?
Kind of a nothing, some sand and some shells. I know a lot of people got outraged, but I like to take a deep breath whenever I see these things. Comey's a really smart guy, for whatever it's worth. I don't like what he does. I don't like what he has to say, and I don't agree with him politically. But he's not a dummy. And what he did is pretty clearly within the range. It's going to upset some people because they want to get excited about something, but this is well within the range of what people have said for quite a long time. In this country, we have a pretty aggressive history of hanging our presidential figures in effigy and other leaders, burning things, beheading. You remember Kathy Griffin famously held like a severed head covered in blood, which was a big controversy early on. So you can do some pretty outrageous things. That's the brilliance of free speech. There should be consequences on whether people like you or not, whether they want to associate with you. But at the end of the day, as far as I could tell, it is not what is referred to as a true threat, which is the legal standard. And then secondarily, this is the actual law that goes in there. 18 U.S.C., it's 871 is threats against the presidency or successors. And almost all of that has to do with mail, most interestingly enough. Like the first 4 sentences have everything to do with mail and missives that are sent via postal service. It just doesn't really rise to that authority. If someone sent me the threat case and said, hey, by the way, someone said 86 Seraphin, I would immediately just go, okay. And I also worked in restaurants for a while because I'm a pretty regular guy. I spent several years in restaurant management and a couple of years working as a server when I was in college and in high school. And we used to 86 things all the time. We used to 86 crab legs. That doesn't mean that we were killing the crab legs. It means we didn't have any more of them. So you were either canceling them or removing them from. It was actually a tactic that you could use on the point of sale system where you would remove them and cancel it. So 86 is it can mean other things, and Comey knew what he was doing when he did it. It doesn't mean that it's a crime.
Kyle, I 100% agree with you legally. But this is not a guy who's selling hot dogs at Dodger Stadium. This is a former head of the FBI. Look at it this way. Let's suppose during the Obama administration, a former FBI head walking down the beach saw 8644 and pasted it on social media. The media would be going crazy. Democrats would be going crazy. And I dare say even cities might even be on fire right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree with you. Look, I'm just saying I'm a rational guy that looks at what it is. The problem is that there were 8646 shirts that were being sold on Amazon. You can find them today if people want to go search for them. They're still out there. Jack Posobiec said it in 2022 about Biden. So, having a healthy and aggressive political discourse, that's how I know it's not a crime, is because you actually have the guy who used to run the FBI, who was a prosecutor. He knows exactly what he's doing. And at the end of the day, I think he got actually what he wanted. He created a big controversy. You and I are talking about it, and that's okay. I don't mind talking to you. That's nice. He's going to sell some books to people that forgot that Jim Comey was out there standing in cornfields or standing out in the woods and looking at trees, and they're going to go, oh, yeah, he's a hero of the resistance, and he just wrote a book. I'm going to go read about it. And the topic of his book, according to him, which I haven't read it, I just saw what he put out, it's that 2 characters, his lead characters, are going to save America from domestic terrorism that is fueled by right-wing demagoguery, which sounds exactly like the sort of narrative that Jim Comey is living in. And then he just spurred it up and said, look, they're coming for me. And by the way, buy my fiction book, which shows what a hero people are that fight against the domestic right.
Yeah, I mentioned yesterday he's got a book coming out in a few days. Do you believe what he said, and that is that he had no idea 8647 meant take out President Trump? He said no idea that it meant that.
Absolutely not. No, of course he knew what it was. Like I said, he's savvy, he's smart, he's playing a game. I listened. I was telling some people a little bit ago, my father listened to the speech that he gave when I was graduating from Quantico and I got my badge, and my dad said, man, that was a really good speech. I mean, he's a really gifted speaker to speak like that extemporaneously. And I said, yeah, that's like the 3rd or 4th time I've heard that speech, because Jim Comey operated out of canned speeches. He's very practiced. He's very deliberate. I imagine he's probably a pretty good attorney when he gives, like a closing argument or something. He's a convincing actor, and he's a very intelligent person. To assume otherwise would be wrong. So I will give him the credit and the benefit of the doubt that he absolutely knew what he was doing, that he was totally poking, the social media hornet's nest, and he got exactly the response he wanted. A lot of people clutched their pearls. Some other people said it was nothing. And at the end of the day, he's going to sell some books. So he comes out winning, and his profile is raised. Again, the statute isn't met. And for folks that actually want to go and read about this themselves and decide what is and what is not a true threat, there are 2 court cases and it's going to be relevant to, I think, our next topic. But they can go out and read Watts v. United States. That happened in 1969. And then the second one actually was just decided in 2023. The Supreme Court did Counterman versus Colorado. And both of those explain what a true threat is and what it is not. And there has to be a lot of legal barriers in hers to include intent, which he just did with his post kind of muddling the water. It's like there's no intent.
Kyle, as somebody once said to me, Larry, that First Amendment is a beautiful thing. Let's talk about Joanna St. Germain, who I don't think is selling a book. This is this teacher in Maine who posted on social media that I hope the Secret Service takes out Donald Trump and the people who voted for him. And then she went on and said, well, I don't mean everybody, just the ones who voted for him, just the ones who kind of put him in office. And she also said, I didn't mean taking out a president because the president has to be dutifully elected. And even Donald Trump admitted that he wasn't dutifully elected. How threatening is that? Does that take it to another level?
It's threatening, but that is almost exactly the verbiage that happened in Watts v. U.S. in 1969. So the case actually described a guy who was drafted, and I had the actual text of it up a little earlier, but essentially a guy was drafted. He didn't want to go to Vietnam, and he said something to the effect of, if somebody puts a rifle in my hand, the first shot is going to be at LBJ. And so it's this conditional statement that if something happens, then I will do this thing. And that conditional language is what saved him when it came to the Supreme Court case, that he was not guilty of a threat. It's the exact same sort of language. She actually says, if I had the skill set, I would do it myself, this Maine teacher. And so I think she's safe based on previous, it's still an ugly look. Like, it's a thing that's a terrible sentiment to walk around with. And maybe you don't want to have your kids in those schools. That's why I homeschool, by the way. So we're just avoiding having that sort of middleman of somebody who has some terrible attitude and idea against any side of the country. But when it comes to the legal grounds, I think she's going to be well within the acceptable range, because the Supreme Court ruled on this a long time ago.
Let's talk about what you think the school should do. She's protected by First Amendment. She's not going to be prosecuted for making a threat to the president. She's a public school teacher. Should she be fired?
I think that's going to come down to whether or not they have a character or a lifestyle sort of piece in their clause of their employment. And that's going to be something that I don't know about how Maine works. I know that when you work for the federal government, oftentimes it'll say that your associations can be taken into effect, the way that you actually behave. There's a good behavior clause, give or take. And so if that's not part of the way that the teachers union has negotiated that contract, it obviously should be. We want our teachers to go out there and, I don't remember what the politics of any of my teachers were when I was a kid. And I had some really great teachers, and they probably all disagree with me at this point in my life. There's just no reason that you should be shoving that down on people and going out on social media.
Kyle, 10 seconds. Comey was interviewed today. What was the point of that? Interviewed by the Secret Service. What was the point of that?
I think they got to show that they're doing something. And at the end of the day, since he wasn't walked off in cuffs, it means that they just talked to him and said, we watched you. We see you do this.
Kyle Seraphin, host of Kyle Seraphin Show, available on Rumble, Apple, Spotify. Kyle, as always, thank you very much for taking the time. God bless.